idea of marriage has changed so much because life has changed so much. And both sexes, men and women, have adjusted to what's going on in the world. But some of it has taken some of the real heart out of living on a family where people depend upon each other and appreciate each other for what the other one does, and appreciates the children for what the children do. And they know they're appreciated because what they did was real. It was some poppycock made up chores, pardon me. People appreciated each other in a whole different way, because you were dependent on the other one to live through the winter just as much as they were dependent upon you to live through the winter. When I was in high school, I had friends tell me that I had friends countywide from activities I was in, organizations I belonged to. They told me I didn't know how to have fun because already in my lifetime, my peers were beginning to live a more modern way. And so, like I said, one time one of my friends says, "You don't know how to have fun." Well, I didn't know how to be silly. Silly wasn't in my book, you know. If the cows were in the road, I knew how to scare them enough to get them to go where we wanted them to go, you know. You had to run and you had to be willing to face the animal when its head was still headed toward you, you know. But I mean, it was real. The silly wasn't in my book. Fun was learning to do what needed to be done because you were learning something, my gosh. See, in those days we were part of a family. Our friends were part of a family, okay? Everybody else was part of a family. That meant something in those days. It means something different these days. It means something different these days. So the whole idea of working together, we weren't lectured that you need to do this so that you'll have something to eat in winter. Somebody might have said that's why the men are bringing wood for the older people in the valley, because we want them to have wood for winter so they wouldn't freeze. But they're not, we don't talk about this as an open subject as a family. That's why we're doing all this hard work or whatever. Or we're not wanting you to learn to make pie crust so that you can make pie crust when you're married and your husband will know that you can bake something. It wasn't that at all. It was just the way it was done. And my situation is in a transition where I was being raised one way and many of my peers were already transitioning into a different kind of life. And the things that girls talked about was different. The relationship between the mother was still in the home primarily, but eventually even the mother would be working out of the home. And the kids were coming home they were called latchkey kids, right? Mom and Dad both working, and they were coming home from school. So by that time it was this little hassle to get the kids up early enough to get yourself up to be ready to get them on the bus and you to leave for your job. Come on, let's go. You know, that throws everything into a different atmosphere. So all those attitudes then toward the family and being a part of a family were transitioning, and it was not the same. But we have lost something. We have lost something about how the husband and the wife relate to each other and how they relate to the children as parents. You were valued for what you could do. Well, your husband couldn't do, and you were darn glad for him to do the things you couldn't do. You didn't want to be out there welding a mower after dark, not that women couldn't weld, but you didn't want to be doing that. You had enough to do. And he was darn glad you were canning so there'd be food for winter. Because if you were eating out of your cellar, it was going to be meager. So I don't know. It's you see, even because the tone. Because the nature, the whole nature of the relationship was different. You wouldn't even couch it in those words. You knew you were just as important, more important. What women could do, most men could not do. And times when men, I knew when after I had my degree and I was counseling in the mental health center, there was a psychiatric nurse. Because she had a graduate degree and I guess her husband didn't, she could make more money he did. They decided she should work and he should take care of the children, even the babies. So after 6 weeks old, or I don't know I don't know what maternity leave is in the workplace these days, but at any rate, she was back to work as soon as she could get there, and he was taking care of. I don't think those kids were even in school before that marriage ended in a divorce. Now, I don't say that some people couldn't pull it off, but I don't think most of them can. The man does not nurture the baby in the same way. His mind is not on the infant in the same way. He's not doing something where he could watch the child at the same time. His mind on it is something that takes his mind off of the infant. In most cases, it's the nature of the being. The whole aura of the home, the whole aura of life, the whole aura of being raised in a family, let alone raising a family, changed dramatically. So many wives went to work during World War II because the men were already in uniform and in the service. So they were working in munition plants. They were doing all kinds of things because they had to, not because they wanted to. Would have rather been home, because what were they doing without? That their children were going out without homemade cookies unless they were made at 10 o'clock at night. There was something about providing a home that had, the definition of word home was different. There were prejudices running around that I became aware of, especially in college. One of the questions that I answered on one of those, you take SAT or what's the other one?
ACT?
ACT, going out of high school for qualifications for going into college. There are ones that take out of college for application going into graduate school. One of those, and it wasn't the
GRE?
It wasn't the, well, I took the GRE. It wasn't the GRE. It was another that I took. The Minnesota Multiphasic Aptitude. Minnesota something or other. Aptitude.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter what it was. So help me, it would take somebody that wasn't raised traditionally to know that that damn thing was biased. Biased. Would you, I'll make an extreme example because I can't remember the actual one. But part of it, the answer I gave was I'd rather walk in the woods. Would you rather go to a, I don't know, I love bowling, but I'll say, would you rather go to a bowling tournament or take a walk in the woods? I said I'd rather take a walk in the woods. Another story I'll tell you, one of my favorite things was to walk in our woods. We had 50 acres of bottomland, 40 acres above the road. Some of that was in timber. I love to walk in the woods. I love to walk in the woods. When the trees were 6 foot through, I can't even reach it. And I don't know how high. I love to walk in the woods. There were flowers in the woods. I loved seeing the flowers. There were little animals in the woods. It was one of the things that got graded me down. Those damn idiots and those damn fools who wrote it. Pardon me. We have some people who are ignorant of a big portion of life. I had a friend when we were in the military. Stephen is a military brat raised by Army parents. Okay, I was not career. I was just military wife. This gal was pretty much younger than I was when I knew her. Stephen was already He might not have been a teenager yet, but he was getting close to being. He was preteen, we'll say. Maybe he was a teenager. I guess he was in high school. Okay, he was in high school. She had worked. She got pregnant. They wanted to start their family. And she had planned to be a mother, a stay-home mom, and raise her own children. So, when she was through with, I don't know how it worked out in her, but she didn't go back to work. And all of her, what do you call yourself, women's livers, most all of her friends thought she had betrayed their cause because she was going to stay home and raise her own baby. It hurt her feelings. She talks to me, she's crying. They have hurt her feelings. Missed the whole point of anything. They're so far off. They're so far off no norm. They've already so been brainwashed by a system rigged, we'll say, to take them in a different direction because they wanted our whole society gone in a different direction. There was an expression somebody said to me, it was another woman, I can't remember who that was, because I'm thinking the expression she had, she was Southern. She said, Wanda, why do they do me this way? And she was hurt. She wanted to stay home and raise her own children. So where does this idea come from? That being a woman, being a wife and mother is not important. It's the most valuable thing in the world. We've lost something between how people know how to interact, to interrelate with one another, and the way I grew up, we learned to relate with the little children, with the older children, with the older children, with the parents, with the older parents, and all the time we're growing along, and people from all walks of life. People now are so, in the work world, it's called compartmentalization. But it's a compartmentalization of life, my good grief, and of your interaction with other human beings, because you're not living in communities like we used to. The closest thing would be if you attend church, the same church on a regular basis, where you develop interrelationships and then friendships with other families that have kids the same age as yours. That's the closest you could come to it now. But before, it was the all of life. And when you went into a bank, you didn't look down upon because your hair wasn't purple or blue and you weren't wearing some ridiculous kind of dress that I would have never worn, because that's what it takes to be a professional now. My gosh. Anyway, people have a value structure that is totally artificial. It has nothing to do with character, let alone what's in your personality, how you carry it, how you carry your character, or how you wear your character. It's a total farce. It's a total farce, let me tell you. It's a total farce. So sometimes when I talk emphatically, it comes off of, I graduated from a private school, fourth in my class. I graduated with honors. I did undergraduate research. I also graduated in 3 years because I was going to school. And I was going to graduate school too. I got a BA in psychology and from Liberal Arts College in Washington State. I have a Master's of Science degree in Family Sciences from a major university with emphasis in child development. And I have worked in a mental health center as a counselor. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And mostly the people loved me because I value people. So that's a little bit about me. Maybe too much for you. I hope not. See you next time.
Hey folks, like, subscribe, tell your friends. It really does help, and it helps the channel grow. It helps us get higher in the search engines. And if you do feel like you can, please donate and help us out on the journey and help us restore this boat. We have a Patreon link. We also have a PayPal link on our website.
Or Schweitzer's life. Oh my gosh. Albert Schweitzer. He was my high school hero.